Welcome to Wise Talk with Heather Criswell. I am so glad you are here today. We have an amazing podcast for you today, all about bullying, but it's going to be a different approach to bullying, and I'm so excited to share it with you. So just as a reminder, what is Wise Talk? What is this Wise Talk radio all about? Wise Talk is basically all of us sharing our stories, our wisdom with each other so that we can access that wisdom for ourselves. You can see yourself in everybody's story. And when we access that wisdom, we actually connect to the love for ourselves, love for our children, and love for each other in this world. That's what Wise Talk is all about. And I'm so excited to have Danielle Matthew here today. Danielle is a marriage and family therapist for the past 20 years. She's worked with children and families and really has a passion for bullying. We connected actually through Zen Parenting Radio, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. And it's just this tribe of amazing people coming together to give a different approach. And Danielle's specialty is all about bullying. She decided that she was working in some, and I'll let her explain a little bit more, but some inpatient behavioral units at the hospital due to bullying. And she knew that there was work that had to be done. There was a different approach that needed to take place. And so she created the empowerment space. It's all about being able to access that self-esteem and those coping skills for the children that are experiencing bullying on a daily basis. So thank you, Danielle, for joining us. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes. So tell us a little bit more. I kind of gave a brief overview, but when we talked personally, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So you have that passion behind it, and I want to share that with everybody. So tell us a little bit about how the empowerment space came to life.
So I had been working for an insurance company previously, and I would do reviews, and I would talk to people across the country and ask why they were having children come into inpatient units. And when we'd ask for the reason for admission, a lot of these kids were being bullied, whether it was cyber, relational, physical, or verbal bullying. And they were ending up in hospitals trying to kill themselves or had threats to or actually attempted. And usually the parents were the last to know. And what I mean by that is parents didn't know this was happening until their kids actually admitted to a hospital. And I felt like more needed to be done about bullying. It's an interest of mine for years, and I had been bullied as a kid, and this was an issue that I really wanted to do more work on. And so I hired a group of people to do a needs assessment in my area to see, do we have programs out there? We have lots of them in the schools, but do we have programs in our communities that really address when kids are at a crisis point of bullying before they have to go into an inpatient unit? And I found that there weren't a lot in our community. And so I was suggested to maybe come up with and make a program myself, because we don't have that for our kids out there and our adolescents. So I spent about a year plus working on a program that is the empowerment space, and it's 10 weeks, and it's 3 follow-up sessions, and it's all cognitive behavioral based, and it's evidence-based practices. So we really want to see how well the program does, and that's why it's in a pilot study. And I really wanted to help our kids out there who don't have a voice and are feeling very depressed, and providing them a program to really empower them as you empower people, Heather, with all of your work. I really enjoy empowering families to help them and not feel like they have to be a victim to bullying. And for
Yeah, that's what I loved about when I found out about you and we started chatting, that the experience that I've had with helping and educating people with bullying is that we take an approach of anti-bullying. Yeah. And what that means for everybody is that we are stop the bullying, stop making it happen. And if it does happen, then tell your teacher and or put an anonymous paper in a box at a school and we'll handle it for you. And every single ounce of it just felt so disempowering to me. Yes. And I too, have been bullied in my book, Wise Talk from the Other Side. Like you experienced that whole experience with me because it was every day, all day. And I really, had amazing parents to support me through that. And I was a very open child. So of course I'd come home crying and, or in Texas, we had to pass a physical fitness test. That was back when Arnold Schwarzenegger decided that we all needed to be fit. And there was these parameters to be fit. And I remember having to weigh in front of my friends, and I was horrified and humiliated, and it just gave them more ammo to do the bullying because I was, bullied for being fat my entire life. And what I realized is they kept saying, have a friend that stands up for you. And a friend would stand up for me. But when that friend was gone, I was completely disempowered. I didn't know what to do when my friend wasn't there or when a teacher wasn't there. And quite frankly, when you've been bullied and bullying, it doesn't happen right under the teacher's nose all the time. Or, your best friend is right by your side to stand up for you. It's in the quiet moments, it's in the shadows. And so I really love the idea of giving our children the coping skills and that empowerment back to say, you know what, this is what you can do for yourself when this happens. And, we don't have to have a teacher. And granted, I'm not discounting the idea that we need help occasionally with things. But again, going back to being bullied, my teacher wasn't there all the time. What do I do? What do I do when I go home and I literally sit in pain for hours? And consequently, I would get a jar of peanut butter and just start eating.
Yes. Right. So we want to stuff our feelings down then, right?
Yes, to cope. So then it made the fat worse. It was a perpetual cycle of pain. And that's what I loved about this is that and anything we push against resists. So what we resist persists, right? We've heard it 1,000 times. And anti-anything is really giving power to that space. And when we say empowerment for the child, when they experience bullying, and quite frankly, this is for all of us. Bullying doesn't happen to just children,
No, absolutely. It happens in the workplace. I hear it from my friends all the time. They talk about bullying and how it happens to them. And they have the same feelings that kids do when you talk to them and you hear them say what their experiences were. And it's really hard. And I think everyone feels on some level hopeless and helpless. And I think that's what I try to do with the kids that I work with in my program is try to make them feel less helpless and hopeless, and that there is some answers out there and ways to impact and empower them to feel better so they don't feel like they're stuck. Because I think that becomes a big issue. Exactly.
That feeling of stuck. Exactly. Hopelessness. And, I had moments where I was like, it's better off that I'm dead. And actually they said, one boy in particular that was on my case for years, he said, you're better off dead. You're worthless to us. And
they say things like that.
When you go home, you think about it. And I'm like, I thought about it and I was like, maybe I am better off dead. Maybe nobody cares about me. And gratefully, I had a mother that came in my room at night and said, you know what, Heather, that's just not true. Yeah. And you're a miracle. And let me tell you why you're a miracle. And, the whole story of her was that she couldn't have children. And I actually technically was a miracle baby, quote unquote. Yeah. But aside from that, the biggest thing that she said to me is it wasn't true. And I believed her more than I believed them because I trusted her more than I trusted them. And so I think that that's a big dynamic for parents that we often also think that we have to do or be more. We have to fight for our kids. We have to stand up for them. And sometimes it's just standing with them and saying, you know what? It's not true. That's what worked for me. Now, granted, I am not a psychiatrist or a social worker or anything, but I'm just speaking strictly from my experience. So,
right. You bring up a really good point, Heather, is that you had a wonderful relationship with your mother and you had such an openness and freeness to be authentic. And a lot of kids don't necessarily have that. So they internalize what you were able to verbalize, and they go home feeling like they're just nothing. Their parents have no idea what the experience is internally for them. And then they end up just stuffing it down until they're so depressed that they end up doing something or texting a friend saying they can't be in this world any longer. And then the friend goes to the parent and says, this is what's going on. So you were really wonderful and fortunate to have such an open, authentic relationship. But for kids who don't, it's definitely a real scary process to have to open up and tell an adult what's going on, especially their parent, because they get embarrassed sometimes.
Oh, agreed. And my mom was the caretaker most of the time until my parents got divorced and I was living with my father. And going into my junior year, I had a month before I got my driver's license. And I understand exactly what you're saying because that's how I felt, because I was crying in my room one night right before school, the day before school. And my dad was like, what's going on? And I'm like, I can't tell you. And it was humiliating. I don't want to tell my dad, yeah, your fat girl is getting trampled at school and can't take it one more year. Mm-hmm. And the car for me was freedom because I didn't have to ride the bus. Right. And that's when, my day would start with bullying and end with bullying. And in the middle, it was all bullying. So I needed a reprieve. And I said to my dad, I can't ride the bus one more time. I just can't do it. And he said, what is going on? He had no idea, to your point. No idea, because my mom had dealt with it. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of this little secret that we had because she knew I was so humiliated. And, she didn't want to put it out there to the world. And he said to me, I didn't know. He said, I will get up. And for a month and a half, and my dad was a night owl. He slept, he woke up at like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning and he worked later in the evening. And, he woke up at 5:45 every morning, 6 o'clock to take me to school for that month and a half, which was huge for him because he never woke up early for anybody, not even Christmas, nothing. It was, but and some people would say, well, your dad was just coddling you. You were a junior in high school. Come on. And what my dad in all his brilliance knew is I had been fighting this battle for 10 years, 10 years. And he knew I was at my breaking point, and he knew that if he pushed me any further, it was going to be a problem. And he knew how to support me and help me in that space. And it wasn't going to the school and fighting for me because I could take to school because I had friends. But on the bus, I had no friends. I had nobody. And it just was too much for me. So tell me a little bit about how this works, how the empowerment space works as far as the program is concerned. What does it look like for a parent when you've got a kid at home, they're being bullied, you know it, you don't know what to do about it. When they come to the empowerment space, what can they expect?
So when they come to the empowerment space, what they can expect is I'm doing a study right now for 10 to 17-year-olds. And so I'm looking for people will probably give me a call and we do a phone assessment. And I'm looking for kids who are at a real typical crisis point of bullying where they are not suicidal yet, homicidal, or, really to that point that they need an inpatient unit of care, but are very depressed and they cannot go on anymore and they can't be in their school, and it's really pushing them down further and further. And so these are the kids that we need to help. And so what happens is we have one first session that's about an hour and a half, and we talk about everyone's roles. We talk about what the role of the parents are going to be, what the role of the kid is going to be, and what my role is going to be. And we kind of review the program as a whole. Then we talk about that we're going to be learning a new skill every week, and we're going to be practicing the skill that's really essential to their type of bullying. So there might be one kid who comes in who's being relational bullied, which means that they are being ostracized in school, ignored, gossiped about, rumors are being spread. And so we will focus on that kind of bullying through role plays that we do, an activity book that we work on, and exercises within the session. And then there'll be some work outside the session that they come back and do so we can talk about it and have further discussion. And parents will also have that opportunity. I will also be really focusing a few sessions with the parents, and it's really to help the parents that aren't knowing as much at the time like your mom did, and how to, contain and hold you and support you, how to do that with their kids. how to be empathic. I have something called the 3 E's that I do with my program. It's called empathy, empowerment, and engagement. So we really teach parents how to be empathic to their kids and still empower them to figure out a way to handle the bullying. And at the same time, though, we're really allowing them, besides handling the bullying, to be able to address it and follow up with their children about how the bullying is impacting them and if it's continuing. So we really have some work we do at the schools as well. We actually go into the schools and we want to open up that dialogue and communication. So once we leave as the program, the parents are able to still have that open door policy and feel a good communication with the school. And at the end of the program, the hope is that they feel better and the bullying has decreased and they feel like they have skills to empower them to handle any further bullying that may come up.
I absolutely love that because again, here we are. We're not addressing the bully. We're not saying anti-bullying, stop the bullying. This is what we need to do to stop bullying. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, this is happening and this is what we can do with it in that moment, and giving that child that power, in giving the parents the power to support their child in that space. It's just amazing. And that's why I love the idea of your program spreading all around the world, because it really has this, if I can't express it enough, is we often look outside of ourselves to try and fix things to accommodate us in that space. And that never works. It never works. To try and change somebody in order for us to be happy or for us to have a better experience, it never works. It doesn't work in relationships. If I try and change my husband to be something that he's not,
good luck. Yes,
it's just never gonna work. Or my family or my friends. If my friend would just call me just to say hi. It's all these expectations we put on other people to perform so that we feel happy and that we feel good, instead of backing up and saying, you know what, I have choice here. Yeah. I can feel good in this moment. I can have these tools to cope with this moment. And, I think that that's what was missing for me, is I didn't really have the tools to cope in the moment. I had the support on both ends, but I just didn't have the tools to cope with it. That's what I love about this program, is actually giving them some strategies. So is there one strategy that you can share right now that a parent could take home right now and say, this is something that I can do in this moment to support my child, to help my child that may be experiencing bullying?
Yeah, so let me talk back about the 3 E's again. It's called empathy, empowerment, and engagement. So an example would be, how are we empathic towards our children? How are parents empathic? And what's really interesting, even if you take a whole room of therapists, not everyone really understands what true empathy looks like. And so one of the ways I teach it to parents is I say to them, can you have an open-ended question back to your child saying, I'm wondering if you're feeling embarrassed by the rumors that are being spread about you at school. And you really put an open question to it. We don't want to tell our children, certainly not our adolescents, how they're going to feel. So we leave it as a very much of a question of putting a feeling out there as an I'm wondering if. So the first step is really having that empathy with your child and kind of putting a feeling to what might be going on, but letting them come back and tell you, no, it's not that I'm feeling this, Mom or Dad, I'm feeling this. Being able to have that room to come back and have some power, because they're already feeling so powerless with the bullying that they need a space to have some power to be clear about how they're feeling without someone else telling them how they're going to feel. So we teach that as a first step. And then we talk about empowering your child. So what does empowerment look like? Well, it looks like coming up with a plan and asking them to tell you what they'd like to do. How do they want to handle the rumors at school and the gossip with the relational bullying? What would they like to do? And then sometimes they may say to you, you know what, don't worry, Mom and Dad, I have it handled. And that's when, as a parent, you have to take a little more control and saying, I trust that you will take care of it, but we need to talk through that plan, and I'm going to certainly follow up with you on what that plan looks like. And would you mind if we share some of this with the school? Maybe there's a school counselor that you like there, that they can also make sure that we're all working together to help your plan and support your plan. And we really do follow up. So it's the empathy, empowerment, and the engagement. Then we engage in the plan and we do follow up on that plan. And so I use this as I call it the 3 E's, because it's really not just empathy, because we can't just talk about how upset our child might be. We actually have to have action. And this is a way to have action, which it still uses the skills that we can do in our program, and let them follow through so they feel good about it. Because I think as kids and as adolescents, they all want to feel good about themselves, and that they don't want someone coming in, as we talked about, and rescuing them. They want to learn how to do things themselves. And so this program gives that platform for that. And the 3 E's is one way the parents can really help their child do that with a particular issue of bullying.
Oh my gosh, there are so many points in there. I was like, yes, 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 yes. There were so many points in there that were so beautiful. And I think that alone, that right there is something that everybody can take away in that moment and really start implementing. And granted, that is just a little tiny taste of the empowerment space.
Oh, yes.
But it actually is really tangible things that we can do in that moment. And my favorite of all, and I'll tell you, I've been searching for a way to reword this, because there are so many schools of thought on empathy. Mm-hmm. And like, to your point, you can have a room full of people and the definition of empathy is different for everybody.
Yes.
And a lot of the experience that I've had with different attachment parenting and all sorts of, label them out, whatever kind of parenting you want to say, a lot of them, when they talk about empathy, they say, look at your kid and say, I know that you're sad. I know that you're feeling mad. I know that you're angry. And every single time I hear it, it just cringes in my body. And I never really knew why until you said, I'm wondering if. Mm-hmm. Now, that changed everything in my body, and I get goosebumps, so that's so true. But it did. It changed everything in my body and even in my thought process, because how often do we say, I know that you're mad? And even to our spouse, our friends, I know you're mad.
Right.
And there's just parts of me where I'm like, you don't know what I am right now. You don't know how I feel. You don't know what. And even if I am mad, I automatically rear up. The hairs on the back of my head come up, and I'm like, I'm going to prove to you why you're wrong and I'm right. And I'm not mad, but I'm mad. But,
That's right.
It automatically sparks this defense mechanism in me. Don't tell me what I am. Don't tell me how I'm feeling.
Yes.
And so as a teen, I can imagine it's even amplified more, because, that space of like, I know what I want. I know who I am, all of that. And so thank you for that. Literally, that shifted everything for me. And I will promise to quote you on that every single time, but maybe not every single time. But I am so going to share that for the rest of my life, that it's no longer this space of, I know what you're feeling. Because even as a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, they're like, you don't know what I'm feeling.
Right.
But I never really knew the words to change that. Because I've also said, are you mad? And that just makes them more mad.
Right. Right. Because you're putting the feeling to them, and instead of them being able to have the power and the room to say, no, this is what I'm feeling. So it's all about the open-ended questions. And especially for parents, I really urge them to have that kind of dialogue with their children and adolescents, because it really will open up the room for such a better discussion.
And that can be across the board. I'm wondering, did you have a hard time at school today, or what's,
Yes.
I'm wondering what's going on. How can I help you?
Right. And if you're wondering if you're not seeing other kids at their homes anymore who used to hang out with them all the time, and you're concerned, or there's other worries as a parent, having those open-ended questions is a great way to get your answer. Because then you're just leaving it to them to share what they want and not pushing them to say more than what they feel comfortable with.
Yes. Yes. And to your point, it gives space for them to own their power and be in their power.
Yes.
Oh, I just love that. I just love that. There was another one you said too, I trust you. And I also need to be a part of this to make sure that we're all on the same page. You put it way better than I did, but that was the point that I got, that I trust you, because we often don't start that sentence out with, what I've experienced a lot is, or witnessed a lot is, I know what's best for you.
Right.
I've been through this. I know what you're feeling.
That's right. Yeah.
All of the things with good intention. And I say that with all my heart, because I really believe that parents have the best intention with that space.
Absolutely, they do. And that's, I think, the hard part, I think, as a parent, is to say and have to learn. And that's what we really do some work on for one of our sessions with our parents in our program, is that we really work on that, because it's not something that's just easy and innate in us. And we have to learn. It's a skill that the parents are going to be learning the same time as the child. And it's really can be helpful, like you said, in all other walks of life and issues, and how to discuss things and have dialogue. It changes the whole conversation.
This is really building also to a very strong network within the family of trust.
Yes.
And empowerment and understanding and love and compassion,
Yes.
empathy. So I often think that, again, we look at something like bullying as the worst thing that can happen to us. We look at arguments and frustration and anger, but it also has the potential to cultivate a new kind of a relationship within your family. And so what if this bullying is happening for your highest good? And it's a hard concept for a lot of people to understand and to even grasp, because it's so painful and it hurts so bad.
Yes.
With that being said, had you never been bullied, would you have this passion, this purpose? Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. But is it possible that the bullying helped you to be able to create a program for the entire world to be able to cope with bullying? Would you, in other words, would you go back through the bullying again, knowing where you are now and what you're doing for the world? Would you experience it all over again?
I think that it would be very painful to do, but going back with what I know now would certainly help me, and it would make it a lot better. I think because I have a personal experience with it, I get it, and my passion comes through. The other piece of my passion just comes from really working with it for years and seeing a lot of kids hurt themselves and not get better. And I feel like there's more that needs to be done for our kids out there in our communities, in the world, that isn't being done. And we have to take a more active, proactive approach. So I think what I know now would certainly help me if I were to go back and do it again. If I had to, then I certainly would feel like a stronger person now than I would then. And if I had a program like this and had skills, that would be wonderful. That would have helped me so much.
Right. And to the point that had you not experienced that, this program wouldn't exist. So we can have a moment where we realize that all of our pain actually circles back to love in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
And now the pain that you experienced is now created this program alongside with experiencing, all the kids that, of course, come in your space, and they're, when you were in the hospital, they're experiencing terrible things, and that amplifies it. But the pain that you experience actually created this program, and it's going to spread across the world. And it's so beautiful to me, because sometimes I think we push things in our life down and away to make it not happen. But if we can see the gift and the beauty in everything that happens to us, and somehow circle it back to love and use that as an igniter to share that wisdom with the world just opens up in really beautiful ways. It's really about having the courage to do it. It's you sitting in an insurance in your office and seeing a need, seeing a want, having an experience that you had, and really embracing it and saying, I have something really magical to share with the world. I'm going to create the empowerment space, and this is going to be awesome. So I'm super excited for it's beautiful to me, because it's a testament to courage when you were experiencing bullying, courage to when you experienced it in the hospitals of feeling helpless, like how do I help these kids when they are really in so far gone that it feels impossible at times, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And then creating this program that is going to support people in this space. So thank you for following your wise inside. And I really see that as a wise inside following for you of connecting into that wisdom for yourself and sharing it with the world. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. I really feel like I want to, we're on this world for a reason, right? And we all have gifts and we have things we need to do before we leave the world. And for me, I feel like I have to help other kids and I have to help them decrease the bullying that's out there, and I have to give back. And once I feel I've done that, then I think my journey is done. And I think until I do that, my journey's not done.
Yes, I agree. And it is quite the journey, because this is something that is really prevalent in our society. And we had talked before the podcast, and I remember the experience that we had wasn't even as intense as what the kids are experiencing now because of technology.
Exactly.
We didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have text. And I mean, goodness, I didn't even have a pager until 1990 or something, 1991. So there wasn't much you could do with pagers at the time. But now there's just such an intense, and I think that it's also, again, in the shadows. It's our kids on their phone late at night or, at school, wherever that is, that they're experiencing things that we don't see or feel or hear. So I think that, do you address that in the program? Yes. Do you address like the actual... Yeah.
About more cyber. Yes, we do talk about it. Once we distinguish the kind of bullying that's causing the issues, we really address it more specifically. So in terms of cyberbullying, that's a really good one. And people ask me about that all the time, since you're right. It's more of the newer things, and social media has just come into effect. And it's like, what do we do about social media? And there was a very interesting, I think, way to understand how kids see the world of social media with their phones and computers that was on an Anderson Cooper special not too long ago, where he had a bunch of parents of 13-year-olds and talking about how important a feature of social media is. Like a phone, it's their lifeline, and it's their way to connect to the world. And that's how social media has become. So as a parent, you have to learn how to work within the understanding of that with boundaries and limits at the same time, which is not always easy to do. But they had one thing that they showed on Anderson Cooper where they talked about a kid who had her phone taken away for the weekend. And literally she had a temper tantrum because this was such an important piece of her. So you were taking away a piece of her through the weekend, because that's how kids are connecting now. It's through social media. And it's such a different impact than when you and I were kids and we didn't have that.
I never really thought about it that way, but it is a piece of them. You're absolutely right. And I never really thought about it that way. So it's not just a consequence or a punishment, if you will. It's actually stripping them of part of them.
Yes.
I don't even know how to be more articulate about that. But I've never really thought about it that way. To be... It's rare I get stumped, but that's actually a really interesting point. Because we, again, as parents are often taught, give your child a consequence. They mess up, they get their phone taken away, but you're actually taking away more than that. And in my experience, it would be what I've experienced most is it's more effective if we actually have a conversation and communicate in that space versus just taking away for the idea of some sort of punishment. Yeah. And so we really need the words to facilitate that conversation. I think that that's really the key for parents is how do we facilitate a conversation in that space where we don't actually have to take away the phone in order to get the results we're looking for. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think you can have that discussion. There's still going to be limits and boundaries that before they're given the electronics, they know are going to be there. So if things are again taken away, we approach our children with an understanding that this is really bigger than we think it is, because as kids we never had these things. But for kids today, it's a whole different world out there. And them being able to communicate with the world is their lifeline. So if we're going to take away a piece of it, we have to have clear boundaries ahead of time. If these things happen, then this is what might happen as a result. And I think it's always, since the parents are the ones paying for the electronics, that they have control over the electronics and are checking periodically to see what their kid is doing on social media, what their kid is doing on their phones, what they're writing on Snapchat or any of the Instagram accounts. I think it's always good to just be checking in, and the kids will know that because you'll set that up ahead of time. It's really important to be clear with kids ahead of time of what the expectations are going to be, so there's no surprise.
I love that. You nailed it. No surprise, no surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where the surprise comes. Sure. As far as a parent is concerned. We're frustrated, we're angry, we don't know what to do. Give me your phone. You're done. It's gone, know. Right. And that just amplifies all the anger, frustration, ripping that lifeline away, where the alternative, to your point, is that we've set these guidelines before. And I talk about this in our book, How to Raise a Happy Child. We do that with toddlers and young children. This is what we're expecting. And I do that with my son. Mm-hmm. Now, listen, here's the deal. We're going to the play place. Now, how do we behave in the play place? What do we do? Do you hit? Do you yell? Do you scream? And I go through this with him. Now, if you choose to hit somebody, what does that tell me? That tells me that we leave. And so we have these clear expectations and guidelines. And it doesn't mean that a temper tantrum's not going to happen.
Of course.
Or that they're not going to have a meltdown. But what it is establishing that groundwork. So when you give those electronics over, just to your point, mm-hmm. I have bought you this phone. Let's be clear, this is my phone. Mm-hmm. And I am sharing it with you.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
This is not your phone.
It's a privilege.
This is my phone. Yeah. And I'm sharing it with you. Now, if you want to take the next step and say you want to buy your own phone, that also, I believe, kind of negates a lot of the ability to assist throughout the experience because, again, if it's their phone, it's their phone. But we set the expectations early of this is what I expect, and I need to be super clear with you that these are the boundaries that work for me. Mm-hmm. Now, does that work for you? Do you have anything that you feel is unfair? And actually facilitating a dialogue that, this is what's comfortable for me. Mm-hmm. Does that work for you? And if it doesn't work for you, we don't have to do the phone thing. It's cool. Like, I don't have to buy it.
Right.
So, right. But to your point, establishing so there's no surprises, because I think that's when the heat happens for everybody, and it amplifies it and makes it 10 times worse across the board. And it doesn't, again, mean that temper tantrums, anger isn't going to happen.
No, it still will. But at least they're going to be, parents, I think, will feel a little bit better that they've had this lovely discussion. They've been open and it's clear, and the boundary still has to be followed. But at least they were clear, and there was warning, and it was done very fairly.
Yes. And you do it in a space that is clean and clear and not full of anger or frustration. It's exactly full of excitement, and I believe you, I trust you, I value you, mm-hmm. and I know that you can handle this. And really setting that expectation up of, I trust you, I know you can handle this. And if you slip up or something goes wrong, we're going to work through it. Like, we're totally going to work through this. That sets a different pace too. It's not in a control space, I believe, for the kid, mm-hmm. that you screw up, I'm taking this phone away, is a different experience of, look, you mess up, we're going to work through it. Now, that may be taking the phone away, but we're going to work through it,
There's room for dialogue about it. Even though I'm going to follow through with my boundary of what I said I was going to do, there's still room to discuss it. So next time, this doesn't happen.
Exactly. And I really feel like a lot of times, to your point, that dialogue is the missing factor because it really sets the tone for our experiences together. And I'm learning very quickly that that's a big message for myself, is that how to give tools and strategies for communicating from the heart instead of, just communicating out of anger or frustration or just not knowing what to say even. There's sometimes, my son will say something, I'm like, I don't know what to say to that. I have no idea what to say to that.
Heather, you make a really good point in saying that, because I encourage parents, when they do need to have this dialogue or something has not gone right with the social media the way it's supposed to be followed, that parents are in a place where they're not just coming home and rushed or just came home from a stressful day, that they take a little time to breathe and think about what they're going to go back and say to their kid instead of just going back into it right away after they came from one thing that might be stressful, like coming home from a long day of work. Give yourself, as the parent, a little time to breathe so you can be thoughtful about what you say to your child, and it can be a better, more powerful conversation versus going in when you're in a real stressful place yourself.
That is an excellent point. I love that. And I have shared that one strategy I share to do exactly that is that when we pull into the driveway, we turn the car off and listen to a song or some sort of 2 to 3 minute thing. For me, it's a song, and I'll turn the car off and I'll put it on my iPhone or even on the radio. Just give yourself 2 to 3 minutes to decompress from whatever experiences you've had before. Yeah. And come into the moment fresh. And for me, I like listening to some sort of old school 90s hip hop, hip hop, hooray, ho, whatever that is, so that I get back into a good space for myself. Yeah. Then I can approach any experience from a space of love instead of, to your point, being frustrated from work or the drive home even, just traffic, whatever that is. Or I've got to get dinner going. I've got to take care of my husband, or I've got to go here. I've got a meeting, whatever that is. All of this gets mixed in together, and it just creates this volcano of, cuckoo eruption. And, I think it's really important that is a very valid point. Get centered and aligned before you go into that space. So, oh my gosh, I could seriously talk to you for hours about this. And actually, we technically, truth be told, have talked hours about it. So I want to give everybody the opportunity to know exactly where to go and how they can, if they're having an experience right now where their child's being bullied, especially specifically to your point, 10 to 17 years old, how can they find you? What can they expect? And how does it look to engage with you immediately?
So even if you're not within a 10 to 17 range, if you're still having issues with your child being bullied, I still do private clients and consultations as well, and can certainly have elements of the program. But for the pilot study, they need to be 10 to 17. But I'm certainly open to working with other kids, and I never want to shut my door down to children who are being bullied. But the way that they can find me is that I have a website, and you can look me up on my website, which is empowerment D Matthew at empowerment.space is the way to reach me directly if you'd like. And I also have a phone number of area code 818-267-4282, and that's a great way to reach me directly. And then again, you can reach me at my website at www.empowerment.space. If you'd like to go to my website, learn more about my program, that's another place to go as well. And I welcome all consultations, and I do take insurances of MHN. I take Blue Shield, I take Beacon and Magellan, and we can have insurance also towards the program. And I do a sliding scale as well based on your income and what you can afford, because I don't want to have people not be able to be a part of the program that really need it. So I want to make it as open to people as we possibly can. And so I really would look forward to, and we have openings right now for the program. And certainly if your child is not within the age of 10 or 17, I would still be open to talking with you as well.
That is so fantastic. I'm telling you, I felt it in my bones. And again, I follow my wise inside feeling at any given time. And I knew when I met you, I was like, this is going to be powerful. This is going to change the world. This is going to help children in so many ways feel that love for themselves and be able to convey that love out in the world, even when the world tells you you're not good enough and you're not great. And so I'm really incredibly grateful for you having the courage and the wisdom to step into this space. And I really just want to do just a couple of quick highlights of the things that I love the most, things that we can take away from this podcast right here, right now, is one, the question, I'm wondering if. It's so powerful. It's so meaningful. It's so easy. Just put it in your head when you're having a moment, even with your toddlers, with your child, with your spouse, anybody, friends. I'm wondering if you're upset. I'm wondering if whatever, right? I think that is just the most powerful sentence we can begin with. And what I loved when you said the most, what most of us internalize, I was able to verbalize. And I think that that's a huge key for all of us, that we internalize so much and we don't have the skills to verbalize it. So that was just super powerful. And how do we hold space for a child? The 3 E's, the empathy, empowerment, and engagement. I trust you. We give this space. I'm wondering if we give them the space to have the power. And I just really want to encourage us all to be in that space of, you know what? We are empowered. And what I will say is my mom said over and over again, when the world told me that I wasn't enough, my mom said, it's just not true. You are amazing. You are powerful. You are wonderful. And we have this idea that when we say beautiful, nice things to each other, it's going to make people be in their ego, or we need to be humble and not say those things about ourselves. And when other people say it, we need to be, oh, that's not true. I'm just an average person. What I really want to say is that we need to stand in the space with each other to build each other up, because the world does enough of tearing us down. Especially parents, we need to be the safe place for them to fall, to realize that they are powerful. They are amazing. They are wonderful. I'm so proud of you. And it's not going to hurt our children. It's going to build them up. We all have these experiences of feeling not enough. And when somebody that we love agrees with the world that we're not enough, we believe them. We really believe them. And we can shift that. We can say it's not true. You are enough. So, Danielle, we're going to do so much more. I promise. We'll have follow-up after follow-up. We'll do some workshops to help parents through this, because there's so much more to be said about it. Mm-hmm. And I just really encourage us all to stay in our place of power. And I love the empowerment space because it just feels good to stay there. So thank you so much, Danielle, for coming in. For those of you, again, that want to know more about Wise Inside, you can always find me at wiseinside.com. Our books are there. We have games to support you in that communication, Wise Talk for Families, where you can actually communicate with each other on a deeper level in a meaningful space in a short amount of time. So we have a lot of tools for you guys to support you. The empowerment space, Wise Inside, there's so many more to come. And that's what this podcast is all about, is bringing light and love to the world by us showing up and being our best selves and following those Wise Inside moments so that we can tap into that wisdom and experience love for ourselves, our children, and each other. So thank you again, Danielle. I appreciate you. I love you and support you, and know that your stuff is magical, and it's going to be a big deal on this planet. That I know for sure. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Heather.